So Roger Zelazny has done it to me again. Every time I start one of his books or stories, I think, surely they can't all be good. He has to have written some duds. Lord of Light is the first thing I ever read from Zelazny, and it just blew my mind. I haven't made a review of it because I'm going to read it for a second time in the last 3 months before I make a review. And then I read A Rose for Ecclesiastes, and I was like, this might be the greatest short story ever written. It's so beautiful and tragic. But this book, this Immortal, is also not a dud. It is amazing. And after Creatures of Light and Darkness, I think he might be my favorite writer of all time. I'm going to hold out on that claim until I finish reading the Amber series and the other 4 or 5 book club edition hardcovers I have of his works. But let's get into this. This Immortal was originally published as And Call Me Conrad in the magazine of fantasy and science fiction in the fall of 1965. Let's pause this real quick. 1965, like, look at the 1960s when it came to groundbreaking science fiction and fantasy. I'm going to primarily focus on science fiction because this is a science fiction novel. But look at this list from the middle of the 1960s. Dune, The Man in the High Castle, Slaughterhouse-Five, Lord of Light, Solaris, Waystation, Dangerous Visions, Dragonflight, Three Hearts and Three Lions, Stranger in a Strange Land, 2001: A Space Odyssey. And this isn't even factoring in like the wonderful bootleg ace printing of Lord of the Rings and the proper mass market reprinting of Lord of the Rings. Like, the 1960s is just incredible when it came to speculative fiction. I don't even know what modern science fiction and fantasy would look like without this decade. Anyways, back to what I was saying. This Immortal was originally serialized in 1965 and published as a standalone novel in 1966, and it tied with Dune for the Hugo Award for Best Novel. Yep, it tied with freaking Dune, of all things, for Best Novel. Like, keep in mind that Hugo Awards are voted on by the public, so this Immortal was incredibly popular in the 1960s. This is just another one of those things I would have never known without a deep dive into older speculative fiction. You're probably going to hear a rant like this every time I review Zelazny, but why is this book not more popular? I've never seen it on a top 100 list of any kind. Stuff like this just fires me up. You get dog turds from this era on these lists, but actual works of art get ignored. I know the lists are designed to annoy people and get them to share them as they complain about the picks, but still, this just makes me loathe these lists even more than I already did. Okay, hold on. All right, I'm done ranting about the injustice of Zelazny's obscurity among modern readers for now. I'm going to assume that some of you are book collectors like I am, and this copy is the earliest complete version of the book. It's the hardcover book club edition, and it includes all the sections that were edited out during the serialization in the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. It was released as one of those Ace mass market paperbacks first, but it was still missing sections that were edited out during serialization. As a quick aside, those Ace mass market paperbacks, like, they're cool, they have great art, but the paper they were printed on is very acidic. That's why when you pick up a copy, they're usually very yellowed and they feel very fragile. And I highly recommend that you don't use one of those as your long-term reader. It's probably going to fall apart on you, especially if you read it more than a couple times. And years from now, you're going to crack that book open and it's just going to disintegrate. And you're going to be like, oh, well, I want an older copy. And they'll be all gone because people like me will have bought them while they were still cheap. So just keep that in mind as a collector, especially as someone who wants to go back and read it in the future. Fortunately, this book is still in print, so you can pick it up from any online bookseller, and they're good copies. For most of this review, I'm just going to rattle off things about the book. Things I enjoyed, things I didn't enjoy. There's very few of those things. And just talk about the book in general, the characters, the story. I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm going to try something a little different this time. And instead of reading the summary in the book jacket, we're just going to go on a little journey. The book is written in first-person perspective and follows Konrad Nomikos, a man who may or may not be the oldest living human in existence. He has a very interesting past that Zelazny does a great job of teasing to the reader through the entire book. He does a great job of giving you just enough info to feed your imagination. I spent a lot of time outside of reading this book, just thinking about Conrad and what his life must have been like. Even after finishing the book, I still think about him all the time. That has to be a good thing. One thing I've started to notice with Zelazny's characters, bear in mind I'm 3 books and 1 short story into his writing, is his male protagonists seem to always be like a competent expert. And I think one of the reasons why is because at the time, like, these books are so short. Like, you don't have a lot of space to really flesh out the backstory of someone. And I think that's like the easiest way to get someone into a situation and get the ball rolling. This isn't a critique, because while each one of these characters is like a competent expert, each one is very unique. And while he does start them in this little tropey box, he very quickly expands them into very real characters that you're genuinely interested in. The story mainly revolves around Conrad working begrudgingly as a tour guide of the remnants of Earth for a member of one of the powerful alien families. The alien race known as the Vegans come from one of the stars close to Earth. They showed up to Earth shortly after the 3 days, which the reader is left to infer was a nuclear war that nearly wiped out humanity. This book, it's a journey. Like, Conrad is taking this alien to these different sites on the planet, because Conrad's like a mix of like a archaeologist slash like museum director, where parts of Earth are a museum. And the journey feels a lot like chapters in Hyperion that cover the journey to the temple. Lots of interesting places to see. And with the help of the supporting cast, we get to speculate on what Earth would be like long after a nuclear war has destroyed most of the planet. There are terrifying mutants living in the nuclear wasteland. This has to be an influence for things like Fallout. They talk about places called hotspots, which seem to be ground zero for where nukes were dropped. It's where you find the most corrupted life forms. Speaking of corrupted life forms, you get all these odd creatures, mostly mutated humans that are known by the names of whatever creatures of myth they closely relate to. Things like satyrs. So say there's little goat-legged looking dudes with horns, like they refer to them as satyrs, or other mythological beasts. In this book, some of the members of the group even question whether or not these are actual creatures of myth, reborn thanks to the ravages of nuclear radiation. Also, there's a doggy. He is the goodest of boys. I won't say more because I loved when he showed up, and I know you will too. This book has a lot of exciting action scenes while still also having great moments of reflection. We get to see through the eyes of a man struggling to recover the past while also trying to forge a path into the future where humanity can come back to Mother Earth. I want to take a moment and mention Zelazny's writing style. His prose is wonderful. Most of it is simple in the best way possible. He does a fantastic job of getting an image into your head with small, simple sentences. It's one of the things I love most about his writing. If I give anything else away, I worry that I'll spoil the book. Like most books of its generation, it's very short, and it's just a wonderful read. I absolutely loved it. I really hope that you'll give this book a chance. I really think he needs to be more popular now. It bums me out sometimes to think about how wonderful he is, and I never see him on any lists. He's so rarely talked about. Luckily, I've been checking out a lot more Booktube lately, and there's a lot of Booktubers out there that recognize how good Zelazny is. I just really wish he was more popular. Do me a favor and leave a like and maybe a comment if you've read the book or have any other Zelazny books you recommend. Chances are, whatever Zelazny book you recommend, I have a hardcover book club edition of it. Every time I go to a bookstore and I see one that I don't have, I buy it. So any recommendations, leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.